And welcome back. If you remember in the previous video, we did some work on getting electrical disconnected from both passenger and driver side of our engine, and went ahead and got our alternator out of here, unmounted the power steering pump, pushed it off here to the side underneath the TIPM, and also got our air conditioning compressor unmounted from the block. So now we can kind of just swing that compressor out of the way as we need in order to get to other items. We still got some work to do on the top part of this motor. One piece of it is going to be getting the brake booster assembly out of here, getting the intake removed as well, and then it looks like we've still got those heater core hoses to remove from the pump while we're here. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and next let's take care of getting the let's go ahead and take care of getting the brake booster out of here, because it's going to require a bit of work inside the dash to get the clip that attaches to the brake pedal undone, and then there's 4 bolts that hold it from there. Once we have those loose, we'll come out here with a line wrench and crack our 2 brake lines loose, and then we should be able to pull that assembly out of here relatively easily. Let's see. Yeah, shouldn't be too bad to get that out of there once all that's disconnected. Okay, so let me go grab some tools and a shop light, and I'll bring you back. One moment.
And welcome back. Hopefully the light's not swamping out the picture too much. It's like it's not a lot of space underneath here to get everything. But here on the brake pedal, where this rod that goes into the brake booster, you'll see this metal clip on this side of it. And the way that clip works is on this side of it, right where you see it's kind of bent over, it's a little tab that you kind of have to bend up in order to get this clip to slide off of this pin, because it kind of locks, that little tab locks it in place against the pin, so you just kind of have to pry that up with a screwdriver. Now, the book I have says that whenever you remove that, they want you to replace it with a new one, and I have a couple of new ones floating around here. I just got to find them from when we did the work on the 2009. The clip should be the same. But what we're going to do is let me get you some light back here. Touch the screen, wake the screen up so I can hopefully see what you're seeing. So we're going to remove that clip, and then we're going to remove the 4 bolts that surround it, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to work on that, and then I'll bring you back. One moment.
And welcome. So just to show you, we got our fasteners off. So there are 3 15mm bolts with the built-in nylon inserts on it to lock them in place, as well as the built-in washers. And of course that clip we showed you earlier. And just to show you here what you're prying up on to get that clip to release is that piece right here. That little piece that bends down, that little tab. You're going to bend that tab up, and that'll allow you to slide the clip forward and get this off of that assembly. To be fair, does the book say anything about removing the brake booster to make room to get the engine out? No, they do not. At least the book I have, it doesn't state it. Of course, the book I have, to be fair, also states to do a couple things that you wouldn't do to this truck because it's not 4-wheel drive. So kind of have to take your book that you're looking at with a grain of salt, and your own experience may vary. But again, the reason why we're doing it, and you might be able to swing past it. I mean, you do have a little bit of a gap. You can still get the ignition coil and everything off and actually change spark plugs in there without hitting that booster. And you might be able to just kind of raise the engine up and push it off to the passenger side to clear that. But you know, we have our emergency brake set at this point. We also have the rear wheels chalked, because remember, the minute we crack this loose, we're not going to have hydraulic brakes, at least via the pedal. But with having that out of there, then I don't have to, or I should say we don't have to worry about shifting the engine for left or right, things of that nature. We can just kind of pick straight up almost on that and know that we're not going to hit this. So again, your mileage may vary. Just be mindful of, obviously, that the minute we crack these loose, once we go to reinstall this, obviously we'll have to bleed the brakes on all four wheels to get the air back out of the system. So a little bit of inconvenience from that aspect, but it also gives us a pretty huge convenience for being able just to get stuff out of the way to pull this motor. So now that we got our fasteners taken loose on the inside, I'm going to get some line wrenches, crack these brake lines loose. I'll put something down here, like a towel or something down here, just on the frame to collect anything that may drip as far as the brake fluid. Once we get those lines loose, I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see that we've got our brake booster out at this point. Once you get it free, you might fight with the dipstick a little bit, just kind of have to push that off to the side a bit, and then take these two brake lines here and push them back, and that'll give you the clearance you need to finish getting that out. It is a number 12 out of our line wrench kit here. I believe that's 12 as in 12 millimeter. I'll see if I can find a link to where I got this. I believe this was off of Amazon, but you can see it's just OEM Tools. It comes with these flexible heads on it, which are nice in some situations and kind of aggravating in others, especially when you want that wrench to stay nice and straight and you put torque on it and then it bends down. But like I said, they get the job done. That's my only beef with them. But I'll put a link to where I got these in the description. And down here, you'll see that we've got our brake booster, obviously now removed. And it's just kind of tilted backwards. I'm going to find some caps to put into these ports to keep dirt out of them. But what I find is that if you tilt that forward, that will actually gravity feed out until that reservoir empties itself. So I usually just kind of like keep it tilt backward just to keep it from draining all over the place. And what we're going to work on next is getting that fuel line disconnected so we can work on getting the intake out of here. Now the fuel line, you'll notice, has an adapter plugged into it. It's got the letters NX written on it, the little black adapter you see there. If you remember, this is the fuel rail off of the 2009 we were working on. The reason why it is on here and not on the 09 is that when we did the buildup of the 09, we wanted to make sure that we didn't find any more bad injectors, because we found about 2 bad injectors when we were troubleshooting it, and then we ran across another one. So what we wanted to do is just verify that, because we knew that when we got this truck in, it ran, drove fine, so we knew the fuel rail and all its injectors were good, so we used it as a donor. We used that adapter originally to check the fuel pressure on the 2009 when we were doing our troubleshooting, but it's also going to come in handy for this build as well, also for fuel pressure related. Now those adapters are used by individuals. That's actually a nitrous oxide adapter, and what that allows individuals to do, just like it is on this truck, where you need to monitor fuel pressure or you need to tap into the fuel rail, but there's no Schrader valve, there's no other means to do that. You can see it's got a port that right now just has a plug in the side of it. So we're going to remove that plug when we get to this point in the process, and we're going to put a fuel pressure sensor in there that will then be monitored by the bank's iDash. And that is because since we're supercharging, we need to make sure that the fuel pump can keep up with the demand of fuel, and that we don't inadvertently drop in fuel pressure, then cause a lean condition in the engine, which will then cause very bad things to happen. So when we get to that point, like I said, we'll take the plug out and we'll use that adapter to allow us to put the fuel pressure sensor in its place. So again, what it is, and I'll see if I can find, I believe I got that one off from Summit Automotive, and I'll put a link in the description to that particular adapter in case you're looking for one as well. Now, don't get me wrong, some Rams come with a fuel pressure sensor on the rail. Some trim levels do, most trim levels that I've seen unfortunately don't. But what we're going to do to take that line off, we're just going to use this utility here, this tool I should say, that'll clip around that line. And then these, since this is round barrel here, will help push back on the fingers and allow that fuel line to release itself. Now, there may be a little bit of pressure in that fuel rail. It should have had enough time to dissipate at this point, but it may squirt a little bit out. So we'll just make sure that we've got some rags in place to collect that, but just be mindful of that. And the kit, which I'll find a link on Amazon to where I ordered this tool, just comes out of the Astro Pneumatics Master Disconnect Kit, which is a kit that comes with several pieces. You can see here for disconnecting fuel lines, various types of brake lines, transmission cooler lines if you need it, taking lines out of filters. I mean, it covers quite a large selection of items. But that's the one we need for here. We're going to get that line disconnected. And then we'll start working on our bolts to go around the perimeter of our intake and see about getting this intake out of here and go on with the next piece. So once we get this intake loosened up, I'll bring you back. One moment. Actually, I'll see if I can set the camera up and show you disconnecting that line, to kind of show you how this tool works. One moment. And welcome back. So get you in here, and yes, I am missing a clip that I need to order. There should be a safety clip that clips around the collar here and then clips around the base of this, and it's there to keep this from inadvertently coming out on its own. So I'll have to order that clip. And there's actually two ports on this adapter. You'll see a port here and a port here, so you can use either one or both if you need. So see, we're going to take this, it kind of splits. We're just going to work on getting these two ends fished in through here, and sometimes, because of this adapter, sometimes I have to fight with this a little bit. There we go. There's that side, there's that side. Okay, so now that it's clipped around that line and fed in, we should be able to then push in on our tool. There we go. And then get our line to disconnect. And hopefully you saw all that. So all it does is it compresses the fingers inside of this adapter and allows it to clear that little lip right there. And we had a little bit of fuel in there, as you can see, not much. I figured the pressure probably would have drained out by now. It's been in the garage for about a little over a week at this point, but a little bit of spillage, but no biggie. That's what the rag's there for. So now what we can do is work on getting our bolts out that go around our intake and getting the intake out of here. I got about 3 more injectors on this side to disconnect out of the harness. You can see one's disconnected right there. And then we'll get the bolts out of here, and then we'll see if we can get this intake out of here. And when we're ready to get it out, I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we've got our fuel line disconnected, all of our electrical, all of our vacuum, and our other hoses coming off of it, and all of our bolts around the perimeter. I believe we've got them all at this point. They've all been loosened. There will be one electrical connector on the back of this intake. That'll be, you kind of have to get this intake started up and kind of pull it forward slightly to get to it. And that is there's a servo in the back that controls the short and long air runners inside of this intake, and it's plugged in into the back of it. So usually what I find that you can do, like I said, is just kind of pick this up once it's loose like this. And you can see, and we can just kind of shift it, get it off to the side like that, and then we can eventually get in behind it there and usually get enough slack and kind of feel for where the release is at inside the connector. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to need to get up there and kind of use both my hands to do this, but as you can see here, we're loose, we're out at this point. just one more connector, we can get this intake out of here. So let me work on this and I'll bring you back, and then I'll show you the back of this and kind of show you what you're dealing with. One moment. And welcome back. So I just want to give you a better shot of this. You can see, you can kind of get that intake out at least that far, and that gives you enough room to get behind here, and you can probably see that servo right there, and there's the connector that comes in through the bottom. And yes, it does have a lock tab on it. And like I said, if you're having trouble getting the lock tabs to release, just hit it with a little bit of WD-40, and that should help you get that lock tab out of there. But like I said, that'll be the one you're fighting with a little bit. You just kind of have to, you know, like I said, as you see here, get it out as far as you can to give you some working room, and get that connector unplugged. And also, don't forget about your map sensor. I forgot to mention that one. Map sensor right there. You see the straw pointing at the very top corner of that. Now that'll be the one that we will also be removing and not reusing on this truck. We will be plugging in an adapter and using an SRT4 map sensor, if I remember correctly, because remember, we need a map sensor that can read positive boost that's going to be generated by the supercharger. So I'm going to continue to work on getting the connector off the back of this in the servo. Don't ask me why they designed it and put it at the very, very back like that. You can actually get, I think it's the 6.2 and the 6.4 liter intakes and put on a 5.7, and that servo is actually in the very front of the intake on that one. And all you have to do is get an adapter harness or just lengthen the wires, and you can use it on a 5.7. But in either way, any case, let me get to work on this, and once we get that final connector out, I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we've got our intake off. At this point, you can see our MDS solenoids, you can see our VVT solenoid. That VVT solenoid has to come out of there in order to get our hoisting adapter installed. As a matter of fact, this foam block has to come out of here as well. And you can see the connector on the far back there, top, gray, that one right there. That is what connects, that is the electrical connector for the MDS solenoids, these, and your VVT solenoid. So we've got to get, we've got to get that disconnected in order to be able to pull the engine out. So that's another connector. And to show you with what you were fighting here, give you a better view, this is the back of the 5.7 intake. And that is the connector for that servo right there that you're kind of fighting with to get it off. Like I said, there's a popular mod going around where you can, you can get an intake off a, I think it's a 6.2, 6.4. I think the 6.2s and 6.4s use the same intake, and you can use that intake in lieu of a 5.7 intake. You just have to swap the fuel rail around the other direction. And you have to lengthen the wires or get an adapter harness that'll take these wires and run them up to the front, because your servo is on the front and not on the back. And also keep in mind, if you're going to do that mod, your air intake is different. It's actually kind of cocked. I think it comes right out the front, if I remember correctly, on that model, or it's kind of cocked to the side. It doesn't exactly come out like this one does. So, we wouldn't be able to, you would be able to use, but we'd have to do a lot more modifications. So if we were going to do the same thing and change this out to like the 6.4 intake, we would be able to use it. But the problem is our duct working that came with our ProCharger kit would no longer meet up with our throttle body in that case. But as you can see, this bad boy needs a cleaning. Now, depending on the cost of this and the availability, there's several in the aftermarket. I don't know if I trust the aftermarket ones or not, but either way, this is going to have to, if we're going to reuse this, it's going to need a nice, thorough, deep cleaning before we do that. But anyway, that's later work. Just kind of, we'll get these intake ports covered. But you can see they've just got the stereotypical kind of carbon buildup in them, just from years of the PCV system, remixing in those recirculating some of the exhaust gases back into the intake. And let's see. Yeah, that don't look too bad. It's gonna need definitely gonna need some cleaning though. Not too terrible. So what we need to do is get that electrical connector off there in the back. We'll pull this piece of foam out that you see here. Well, actually, before I do that, I'll get these ports covered up and see if I can get some of the debris vacuumed up out of here, because there are 2 bolts underneath this padding that the engine hoist will screw into, and then it anchors to this main big bolt here up front. Okay, awesome. So we're getting there slowly, surely. So let me get that electrical connector undone. And just looking over things here, I think that after that connector's undone, that will, okay, let's, well, we got the connector there, and we've got the heater hoses, which I believe are all that is left of the top side. And then when we come back, we'll crawl underneath and we'll see about getting the oxygen sensors removed, because they're gonna, A, they're gonna be replaced, and B, when we unbolt the collectors from the exhaust manifolds, what will happen is, unless you got like a jack stand underneath there to support the exhaust, the weight of the exhaust will kind of drop a little bit, and it'll be suspended by the wiring for the oxygen sensors. So you don't necessarily want to do that, because it could potentially damage the wiring of the oxygen sensors. So the book just has you, remove them from the exhaust to prevent that problem. And like I said, we're going to remove them anyway, because we're going to replace them. But with that being said, I will I'll let you go, get this connector off, and I'll bring you back when we're underneath, and we'll see if we can get the oxygen sensors out next. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we're underneath, and we've got our oxygen sensor removal socket on the end of our ratchet. Now, these aren't too terribly rusty, so I'm really hoping that they'll break free. And what I'm using is just I'll show you the kit once we're back out from underneath the truck, but it comes with 3 different types of oxygen sensor removals, 2 of which take a 3/8 inch ratchet, and then another one which will take a bit more meatier, a 1/2 inch ratchet, in case you need a bit extra power behind it. But I'm going to see if I can get these to crack loose. And we're on the first one now, which is, you can just see it's about midway of the cat. And then we have a pre-cat one above it, and of course we've got 2 on each side, so we've got 4 total. So here's hoping that these will crack free, hopefully relatively easily, and not give us an issue, and then we can carry on with the next piece. But I'm gonna work on this, and like I said, I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. Hopefully this is framed well. It's kind of hard to do. I've got the camera almost upside down, or pretty much leaned back pretty far. Trying to get you a shot underneath here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And what I'm doing, I'm just putting a piece of cheater pipe onto our ratchet here. And thankfully the 2 on the driver's side cracked free, and we're able to get them out. And I'm really hoping we can do the same thing here on the passenger side. But brought you along for the ride on this one. Now, we don't have as much throw on this side as we did the other side. Let's see. Nope. That one's going to be a tough one. Yeah, we're gonna have to reposition. I'm really hoping I don't have to heat these. Like I said, they don't look terrible. Okay, let's see what we can do with that.
It's just a bad angle on this one. There's not much throw to deal with. Oh, I think it broke. Free, that is. Let's see. Yep, it did. Okay. Yep, there we go. We're just going to let it sit down there and dangle. And now we're going to see if we can get the other one to free up. Or I should say to come out. So apologies for the loud noise. But like I said, thankfully these didn't look too crusty. So I was hopeful they'd come out. Sometimes these can be a bit of a bear. Get the ratchet on that. Yeah, we're gonna have limited throw on this one as well, just because of where it's at. We may have to go at this one top side. Yeah, we ain't got much. We've got transmission lines in the way of us getting that one free. Well, I'll tell you what, you get the general idea. Let me go ahead and pause this just so I'm not burning a bunch of time here. I'm gonna continue to work and situate myself on this one, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. Hopefully you can see it dangling there. We did get that pre-cat one on the passenger side to break free. Like I said, there's not a lot of room here to get a lot of throw with something, but it was enough. We were able to get it to kind of crack loose. Thankfully these came out. Like I said, sometimes they can be a bear, so thank you to the vehicle and thank you to the patron saint of oxygen sensor removal. They all four are out. There's the one that goes into the cat on the passenger side. So with that being said, I think the next thing we can try to do is get our exhaust manifold bolts broke free from our collectors, and as you can see, they're wet. We've been spraying them down. We took a couple of days and doused them down about 2 days in a row with some PB blaster, just to kind of help those along. So I'm going to get on to that next, and we're going to see if we can get those to crack free. I may have to get the 1/2 inch impact, electric impact on those. It's typically what I have to do, at least to get them to break free the first time. But we'll give them a shot, and I'll bring you back and kind of let you know how it goes. One moment. And welcome back. Forgive the awkward camera angle, but hopefully you can see that we've got a pair of needle nose vice grips gripped into the top bolt on the exhaust manifold, upper bolt, driver's side, because the little metal thing that's supposed to fly over and keep the nut from spinning is broke. So the top one is loose, it's just spinning. So now we got to figure out a way to hold the bolt on there, and I think I've got the vice grips in place now. It's an awkward angle, not a lot of room. And on the bottom one, it's loose, but it's spinning inside the nut, so the nut's stripped out. So in order to get the bottom one out, I need to get the top one free, so that way I've got some wiggle room in here to get a pry bar in there, and just try to give it some downward pressure, while at the same time we back the bolt out and see if we can get the, get it to catch or get it to finish pulling the rest of the way through. But either way, this is beginning to get a little fun on this side. So I'm going to continue to work on getting these exhaust bolts out, and I'll bring you back. One moment. Okay, welcome back. Just going to show you that here. We got the top one out. It was easier to actually go in from this side and grab the nut with the vice grips coming up this way.
So now we got the top one out. You can see we can kind of grab this flange now and do some pickup with some downward pressure like this, while at the same time we spin this bolt out to see if we can get it to go the rest of the way free. And you can see there's more debris from when this top brace broke. And again, these are the things that are supposed to keep the bolts from spinning. Okay, so I'm going to continue to work on this, and then once we get out from underneath here, I'll kind of show you what you're dealing with. One moment. And welcome back. So we're here on the passenger side. We did get the driver's side squared away, and I'll explain to you once we're out from underneath here kind of exactly what happened. Now, the passenger side here, it's a little bit more difficult. You can get to that bottom bolt okay, but the top one you can see is kind of way up there on top of the converter. It might be easier to go in through the wheel well if you want to take the wheel well liner out. You can, however, get it from the bottom, but I found if you got enough extensions, you can see my hand here, go up through the top of the converter this way back here, and then kind of just make a beeline for it, because you can get extensions behind the converter here and kind of make almost a straight shot for that bolt. So what I'm using is let's see, I'll get you the size of that here in a bit, but basically they're Astro Pneumatic sockets that kind of have a ball swivel built into them. And if I can get you in on that top bolt, I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm just coming in through the top of the converter, and you can kind of see the socket there, and then just working your way until you can get onto that bolt and then spin it. Now, it may take you, quite a few extensions to come back here and clear all this and get yourself maybe about in here where this cross brace is at for the transmission, just so the extensions drop down enough so you can get something on it and get a good swing. But thankfully in our case, it's either A, wasn't tightened up the last person that was in here, or B, it was the rust penetrant. But thankfully they're breaking loose pretty easily. So we just got the top one there. Like I said, it's a little bit of a fight down below because you got to go on through the top of the converter. And it is easier to get to these things with the oxygen sensors taken out of both sides, just so they're not in your way and you're not fighting them. So if you have to drop this exhaust, you can do it without taking the oxygen sensors out. It's just a bit more of a fight. But if you think you could get those oxygen sensors out relatively easily, then I would say, yeah, by all means, take the O2 sensors out of each side, get them out of your way, and it makes getting to those collector bolts easier. So I'm going to finish working on getting that top one the rest of the way out, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we got both bolts out of each side at this point. And as you're on this passenger side, or this can also happen on the driver's side as well, but as you're taking that final bolt out, the exhaust is going to want to shift a little bit and kind of fall a little bit on you. And it's not going to fall on you, but it'll fall out of place a little bit. It'll add load and bind up taking that last bolt out. So you just come down here, right where it bends after the catalytic converter, and just push up. You can see that move there a little bit. Just push up as you kind of spin that last bolt out. That'll take the pressure off of it and stop it from binding and allow you to get that out. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to slide out from underneath here and kind of show you what was going on with these bolts. One moment. Okay, welcome back. As promised, these are the two bolts that were on the driver's side, and you can see what these little inserts are supposed to do is that they're supposed to capture the nut on the opposite side and then keep it from spinning so you can tighten and loosen. And what had happened on the driver's side was that this one's self-explanatory, and rust just got to it and it just fell apart. So the nut behind it was basically just free spinning, so we had to grab it with vice grips, finish getting it out. And on the other one, I'd thought on this one, I'm sorry, this is the one that broke and we had to grab it with vice grips. This is the one at first that was inside of its holder here. and you can see that that edge is all worn away. And what was happening, let me get it back inside the holder the right way here. Let's see. Anyway, so this nut should have been inside of this holder that way. So what was happening was, and I thought this was stripped out, and it wasn't. This nut was actually spinning inside of the holder. So once I figured that out, I was able to get vice grips on this one as well and get this one out. So on this one, the metal just all bent out of shape, was no longer holding the nut in place. And again, you can see the evidence of the swirl marks of metal, new metal there, against the swirl marks of metal up against the nut. And on the passenger side here, you know, they relatively came out in one piece with no issue. And like I said, either A, all 4 exhaust bolts weren't very tight from whoever worked on it last, or they loosened up over time, or the rust penetrant, the PB rust penetrant, soaking it for 2 days did its job, because they did break free relatively easily. But you can notice here on the driver's side bolts, one bolt is not like the other. They should all look like the 2 that came out from the passenger side, which you see the longer shank. So that one's right on the driver's side. That one's incorrect. The thread pitch is right, which tells me that somebody just substituted, was doing some work on it, probably lost one of the bolts and just substituted it with another bolt. So it's definitely had work, at least work done on the driver's side of this, or perhaps the whole exhaust, and they just lost one. In either case, we'll definitely be ordering some new hardware. We're not going to be able to reuse this stuff. It's pretty much you know, had its day, so to speak. So the next thing we want to do is get back underneath and get that transmission inspection plate / bracing unbolted, get it dropped, and get ourselves prepped to take the torque converter bolts out. So I'll bring you back in a moment. And welcome back. So again, odd camera angles, apologies. So we're back underneath, obviously, and we're in the process of just taking the bolts out to our inspection plate / brace, I guess, if you want to call it that. So you've got quite a few bolts that hold this thing in. Looks like 2 on the very outer edges, so it's 2, 4, 6, 8, like a total of 8 bolts that hold this piece in. And then once we get this piece out, we'll have access to the flywheel to torque converter bolts, and then we can start to work on getting those out by basically just rotating the engine until we can get one lined up with this divot you see here in the oil pan, this space here. That'll give us enough room to get a ratchet in here to get those out. So I'm going to continue to take the rest of these bolts out, get this inspection plate out, and then I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So hopefully you can see that okay. We've got our inspection plate / I don't know. I think it's a brace as well. But either way, we got our plate taken off. And you can see that we've rotated the engine. We've got access to our first flex plate, the torque converter bolt. So we're going to go ahead and work on getting that taken off. And then all we're doing is rotating the engine until we get to the next bolt, next bolt, next bolt, until we get them all out. I believe there is 4. That bolt the flex plate to the torque converter. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting these out, and I'll bring you back when it's done. One moment. And welcome back. Running out of light. Batteries are starting to die in the shop lights and the camera at this point. But I just want to show you what I'm doing. Now this may be cringeworthy, but it's getting the job done, and I don't have a right angled impact. I really do need to get one, once money allows, that is. But if you have a right angle impact, I suggest you use it. So again, like we were saying earlier, we've gotten 3 out of the 4 bolts out of the flex plate and torque converter at this point. And I just want to show you what I'm doing. I'm rotating the engine over until we got the bolt right where you see it, kind of right inside this divot. Now this divot, there's enough spacing. You can get 1/2 inch hardware in here, so you're fine. So what I'm doing to keep the engine from wanting to rotate as I break this free, you can see I just got a big old screwdriver that's kind of wedged between two of the teeth on the flywheel and the casing on the transmission. Again, I'm not being too aggressive with it, but again, just enough to keep that from rotating on us while we're breaking that free. So again, probably not the best method to do it, but yeah, I got to stop it from moving, and that was about the best spot I could finally get a bite on it to keep it from moving. I'm sure there's an actual tool out there that'll keep this from turning, but there you go. And now if I had a right angle impact, I wouldn't have to worry about the rotation of the engine. You know, the hammer strikes on it would be enough to break it loose. And be mindful that, yes, just to show you one of the bolts we took out, you can see that there is blue Loctite. These are Loctited in place. However, it is blue Loctite, so you can break it free. We've gotten 3 out of 4. But just to let you know that they're in there, and they're pretty snug. They're going to take a little bit of effort to get out. I'm going to work on this last one, and I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. So we got the 4th bolt out. I went ahead and rotated the engine over back to the bolt hole we started with, just to make sure there wasn't any more, and it does seem to be just 4 in here. So with that being said, the flex plate is now free of the torque converter. Now they're buttoned up a little bit because there's still a little bit of a friction there between this touching the torque converter, but I might be able to get in here. I don't know if I'm going to be strong enough with one hand to do this. Yeah, you can see it there. Hopefully you can see that torque converter bolt hole is now no longer lined up with the flex plate. I'm able to come in here and just kind of rotate the torque converter by hand, and that just further proves, yeah, well, now we really got out of position, so that just further proves that we are disconnected. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause you. I'm going to clean up some tools, slide out from underneath this truck, and I'll bring you right back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we're back top side of the truck at this point. While we were underneath there, in case you were screaming at the screen, we went ahead and grabbed the starter underneath on the way out. There's just 2 bolts that hold it in. One of the bolts has a retaining clip on it as well, but there's a cable or a wire that runs next to the starter. So we got that out as well from underneath. So just to recap what we've done today, we got our brake booster off. We got our intake manifold out and disconnected. We disconnected the exhaust manifold collectors on both driver and passenger sides. And we've got the flex plate disconnected from the torque converter. So as of now, the only thing left underneath is the transmission bell housing bolts. And that should be the last of the fasteners with the exception of the motor mounts. We'll have to decide how we want to tackle those motor mounts. They're a little bit different than what they were on the 2009. On the 2009 TRX, remember, we had a front differential and everything to deal with because it was 4-wheel drive. So we actually ended up unbolting the motor mount from the block and leaving the main mounting bolt to the frame and everything in the truck, and just lifted the engine out that way. We may do the same thing here. We may not. I'm not entirely sure. So also in the next video, we're going to go ahead and, just to get it out of the way, and remove the water pump, because what we need for the engine hoist adapter is just this main bolt here, which is part of what bolts the timing cover on. It doesn't bolt the water pump on, so we don't need the water pump in there. Plus, it would be nice to get some of that remaining coolant to drain out of the block. It won't get rid of all of it, but it should get rid of another chunk of it. And then we'll get that piece of foam out and start prepping to get our engine hoist in here, get our heater core hoses still have to come out, and then, like I said, we'll have to figure out how we want to handle those motor mounts going forward. So again, the recap in this video: intake is out, exhaust manifolds are disconnected, brake booster disconnected and removed, as well as the flex plate is now disconnected from the torque converter. So we are getting there piece by piece. And I wanted to show you this real quick because I promised I would in the video, and I'll try to find a link to all these tools if they still exist on Amazon and put them in the description. But this was the oxygen sensor sockets that I was using to get those out, and the one I ended up using was this one here. This is the this is the one that takes the 1/2 inch ratchet, a little bit deeper, a little bit more meat. They also give you one that takes a 3/8 inch ratchet, a little bit shallow. This is the one that we use today, and just put a little bit of a cheater bar in our 3/8 ratchet. Probably not ideal, but it worked. And then of course they give you this nice big deep one, which is also 3/8 as well for the drive. So I want to show you that. Like I said, I'll try to find these. If I can find them, I'll put links in the description. But I'll also just give you the part number there. So this PowerBuilt 3-piece, and it looks like the kit number is 648625. So 648625. And I think that will do it. So one more video yet to come. Not sure yet if the engine pull will be in the next video. Just depends on how long it takes us to button up the few remaining items. If it's not in the next video, then we'll do a completely separate video that'll cover just how we pull the engine out of this one. So with that being said, I thank you immensely for watching. If you have subscribed already, I thank you immensely for doing so. If you have not, please consider doing so. And with that being said, I will let you go, and I will bring you back for the next one. Thank you much.